This unit's about writing ratios and proportions. So we start with the simple question of what is a ratio? And a ratio is real simple, just comparing two things. And we can write that several ways. We can write A to B, so we'd be comparing A and B, or just A colon B, which you'll see every now and then, especially in geometry. Or the way we're going to write it, A over B. That's the way you'll see it, generally speaking. So, for example, a volleyball team plays 14 home games and 10 away games. What's the ratio of home games to away games? So home on top, away on bottom. And we could write it either way, which is why we're going to. And that would be 14 over 10. But we'd have to reduce that. 7 times 2 and 5 times 2 is 7 over 5. And we'll do the math just for the fun of it, but we will know that away over home will just be the inverse of that fraction, or the reciprocal of that fraction. So we would get 10 over 14, which is 5 over 7. So ratios and proportions are basically another type of fraction. They're a little bit easier to handle than fractions, but you have to know what you're doing. So a proportion, those are just ratios, are two ratios. Generally, they're equivalent. And there's a lot of different ways to solve them. We can solve them like an equation. Or we can cross multiply. Most people like cross multiplying. Whatever works for you is fine with me. So if we looked at this, and we're going to write it twice, and I'm going to do it both ways. We could say, well, it's x over 30, so just multiply both sides by 30. It cancels. And then there's 1 here and 5 there. And we get x equals 55. Or over here, we do what we call the Jimmy Neutron, because it looks a little bit like the emblem that describes Jimmy Neutron's show. We circle the top and bottom across the equals and multiply. So we get 6x equals 30 times 11. And I almost never multiply out the 30 and 11 because it's easier to cancel later. Let's divide both sides by 6. There's 1 6, there's 5, x equals 55. Same answer. Whatever works. So here's a word problem for you. A recipe calls for 30 tomatoes to make 12 pints of salsa. How many tomatoes should I use to make 4 pints of salsa? So how many becomes our variable? We'll call that x. And the ratio we have is 30, and I like writing out here tomatoes for salsa. So 30 tomatoes to make 12 pints of salsa, and we don't know how many tomatoes to make 4 pints. Again, we just multiply by 4 on both sides. 3, 1, x equals 30 over 3 equals 10 tomatoes. Piece of cake. So I'll mix it up down here. Do it a few different ways. This one I'll multiply by 35, by 35. Cancel 1 and 5. W equals 4 times 5. W equals 20. Here I'm going to cross multiply just to mix it up, even though I don't think it's the simplest way to do it. 2m equals 9 times 12. Divide by 2, divide by 2. 6 and 1. M equals 9 times 6. M equals 54. Over here I'm going to multiply both sides by 54. Cancel, cancel. 1, 6. Z equals 5 times 6, which is 30. Make sure you do your math right. If you want, you can check, but if you do it right, shouldn't have too many problems. Now, I already talked about this, using cross products or cross multiplying. So we do the Jimmy Neutron, and notice, where's the variable now? It's in the bottom of the fraction. So you could still solve it a different way, but this seems to be such an easy method that most people like to use it. And again, I don't multiply out my fractions. Pardon me, multiply out the products because I think it's going to be easier. There's 3 2's, 4 2's, there's 1 3, there's 5 3's. X equals 4 times 5, x equals 20. I think it's just a bit easier to cancel without that. So that's really it for this unit. Now all you have to do is practice. And of course, they get a lot harder, so this is why we did all those equation solving. Now I am going to circle one last time, and after that I will no longer be circling. So 2x equals 3, and be careful, x minus 6 is a quantity, so you need your parentheses, and then we need to distribute. 2x equals 3x minus 18. I think it'd be easier to move these over this way. So that I get x equals 18. You can check if you want. Again, I'm not going to do the circling. 4m equals 5 times m minus 6. 4m equals negative 30. Divided by negative 1. And we get m equals 30. That's about it. Word problem. At the aquarium, seals are fed 8 pounds of food. So, food for every 100 pounds of their body. For every 100 pounds. So it's 8 for every 100. And I think I'll call this body weight. That is, by the way, why pencils have erasers. And if the seal weighs 280 pounds, put the variable up here, what do we get? I'm not even going to cross multiply. I think it's just easier to do it this way. Cancel, cancel. One of the zeros cancels. 10 goes 5, goes 4. I think that's about it. So x equals 4 times 28 over 5. Since this is a real life problem, we're going to get a decimal. I'm just going to blast it out the calculator. 22.4. Probably should have left the 10 in. Would have been easier. Would have gotten 224 divided by 10. So, give him 224 pounds of food. 22.4. Pardon me. Missed my decimal. I was going to say that didn't make any sense. 22.4 pounds of food. That's it. Good luck.